As we move on to our panel discussion, teching it forward. And just a quick one, hashtag MRF 2020, if you'd like to comment on any of the observations that you've heard thus far. Okay, now, teching it forward. It is no secret that retail technology is indeed transforming an industry that's valued at, get this, $26 trillion. 2020 has brought about massive shifts in technological transformations. Amid unprecedented challenges, retail experiences had to be automated, immersive, and of course, relevant. Retailers had to quickly grasp customer needs to turn to new retail tech options. So, our first panel discussion today is going to focus on how retail leaders rejigged operations through enhanced digitalisation efforts. To talk about this, we have put together a who's who of the industry. Let's welcome them up onto stage individually and then hand over to your moderator for this session. Speaking on the stage, we have the Group CEO of the Kamal Osman Jamjoom Group. Please welcome to the stage Hisham Amoudi. Joining Hisham here on stage, we've got the Director of Sales from Zebra Technologies. Please welcome Hozefa. Saylawala. Joining these two, we've got the CEO of LIWA Trading Enterprises, Tesseyman. We've also been joined by the CEO of the Fawaz Alhokair fashion retail, somebody who's traveled all the way from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to be with us here today and to give us their thoughts. Please welcome Marwan Moukarzel. And your moderator for this one to take you through Teching It Forward. Please welcome to the stage CEO PJP Investments Group. It is Tapan Vaidya. And so the panel in place, the stage is theirs. This one is Teching It Forward. As they take their places, remove their masks and ready themselves. Tapan, I will hand over to you to take it on. Thanks to you all.
Thank you, Tom. And good morning, everyone. A big thank you to Retail Middle East for putting this together. I'm honestly surprised and very happy that this is actually happening after, 10 months of no meetings? Okay, so one of the most talked about understanding is that COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the shift to digitalization by 5 years. What we would have seen around the year 2025, we are seeing now in terms of investments and efforts in digital transformation. Thanks to this pandemic, which has turned consumer behavior completely on its head. Example, first quarter this year, at Papa John's, 37% of our orders came through digital means, but 63% came through conventional means, like people showing up at the restaurant to place an order, or people calling the call center to place an order. Come second quarter, 180 degrees turn. 63% used digital means and 37% conventional. Of course, in quarter three, as people started going to work from office, schools reopened, this is now settled at 54% digital and 46% conventional. But this 54 is not going down. It's only going to grow. So we are in a world where technology is at our fingertips. And intertwining technology and customer experience is where successful businesses will win. Now, before I start posing questions to our August panel, I also have some questions for the audience to make it a little more interesting. These are general knowledge questions, but based on tech. And there's a prize, too, for getting it right. Those who give the right answer will receive 1,000 Papa points from Papa John's. You can redeem them for pizzas, chicken wings, what have you. Okay, the first question for the audience. How many bits make a byte? Okay, we have that gentleman there. Why don't you shout out the answer? 8 is the right answer. Well done. Well done. A bit is a binary digit. BI from binary and T from digit. A binary digit or bit is the smallest unit of information in a computer. It's used for storing information and has a value of true or false, on or off. Right. Let's turn to our panelists. So a year where every single day has been about change and challenge. How did it impact your existing business model? How have you embraced speed and adaptability with tech-driven transformation? Would you take that first?
Is it okay now? Or
Yes.
So not to add on whatever has been said this morning, it has been, I would say, a challenging but a very interesting year. So to answer your question properly, for us, there came a day where we had to close 1,500 stores just overnight. I guess we, all retailers in general, we always, had this tech enablement in mind, but we really didn't do much about it. Maybe we always went back to our habits, probably being mainly based in Saudi. I would say customers in a way or another were taken for granted, and everybody thought, this is a mall-only environment, it's the weather, it's the culture. And suddenly you're faced with a huge challenge. So what we had to do actually is simply get the ball rolling. So just to give you an example, before the pandemic, our online sales were 0.5%, which is almost nothing. Today, every day, just not to give names, but a prime brand that we operate is around 15% of our sales daily. How did this evolve? Actually, we found out that it's an opportunity that was missed because of the size of the Saudi market. You can never cover it physically. So you need the online actually to cover that. So it was a mindset that changed from online is a threat to retailers to actually it's a great opportunity to grow because we weren't able to grow. And we launched our own website in 6 weeks. I think we've been struggling with it for 3 years, but it's all about focus and making it happen because you had no choice. So today there's a website that we operate. It's called antum.com, which is antum in Arabic means you or yourselves. So it's up and running, and I would say a lot has been done on the online journey. Just to talk about online, at least for now, we can talk about the experience in the stores later. But I guess it was a wake-up call. At the same time, in a way, I'm glad it happened because it pushed us beyond the limits, and it was, do or die.
Thank you. Hisham, would you add, please?
Just to put things into perspective, and context of KOJ is a retail company. We have our own homegrown brands that we created from scratch and made them regional players. We also have franchise brands like the Body Shop, for example. Some of our homegrown brands are Naomi, which is a leading lingerie brand in the region. So technology for us has always been something that we really crucial and essential to everything we do, because unlike many players in the region, we do create products from scratch. We innovate, and we need technology to do that. But to answer the question, the crisis didn't happen overnight, obviously, because if you work with the Chinese manufacturers, you would have got the heads up at least 2 months before it came to the region. So we were lucky in a sense. For some of our brands, we worked on the supply chain. We knew a little bit about the disruption that was coming. The tsunami was coming towards us, and we were busy fixing the supply chain, stock holding situation, the investment in this space. But we didn't really imagine that overnight, to echo what Marwan said, overnight the shutdown of for us 700 stores, for them double that number. We had to deal with landlords, security and safety of our people, the supply chain, the stock situation, the sense of security. There was panic in the environment. What's going to happen? The malls are shutting down left, right, and center. And because we're pan-GCC, so we had to really communicate with all our teams from Kuwait to Oman to Saudi to UAE. So luckily, the digital transformation for us started 2 or 3 years before the pandemic hit. So we had a head start in terms of, for example, when the stores were shut down, the e-com sites were up and running. Some of our digital marketing was running at full swing, it was functioning. So there was some sense of continuity in place, and there was established technologies in place, and we had to build a tech team into the traditional brands structure, which wasn't easy, but we had the time to do it before the pandemic. And we adapted quickly. Again, echoed everything has been said this morning. We had no choice. Anybody has a choice? You have no choice. You had to move at the speed of 10 times what we used to do. Those decisions that took 6 months in the past, pre-COVID, today they take 6 days, because we all realize the importance of agility and speed. And so we've pivoted our way through it, and luckily we're in a good place today.
Mark?
Good morning, everybody. Echo all the thoughts so far. I mean, I've been asked many, many questions about 2020 as to whether, it's been the worst year ever, and it's doom and gloom, and, you need to get out of the business and do something completely different, and it's, generally a disaster for everybody. My views are the polar opposite, actually. I think 2020 for us at LIWA has probably been one of our best years, actually. Our financial performance has been impacted like most people. However, I think in terms of thinking differently about the way you have to do business, retailing has always been, I think, I've been in the business now for nearly 40 years, and I think it's always been a very, very resilient business, and always been very adept at change and evolution. It's the very nature of the whole retail genre that exists. I think from our perspective, we looked at several, it made us work faster. It made us work in a more insightful way. It made us make decisions very, very quickly. So procrastination doesn't exist in our organization. I think that's probably quite a good thing. We obviously had to deal with communication issues first, because we have a franchise business as well as a vertical business. We operate in the 6 GCC countries. We've got franchise partners. So the first thing was to try and get the business trading as normal and communicating normally, so we understood what was going on with all our partners. And the problem having a franchise model is that sometimes your partners are not as good as you think they are. And sometimes, you know, if they catch a cold, you catch the flu. I use that phrase quite a lot. So some of our franchise partners were just not dealing with the crisis very well. You know, we were dealing with it better than they were in many respects. So that was somewhat challenging. We looked, obviously, very, very carefully at our e-commerce capabilities because we knew that that was going to be a big issue and an opportunity. And I was delighted, actually. We at LIWA kind of deliberately hadn't pushed on years ago with major infrastructural development on e-commerce, because the e-commerce world has changed completely in that you don't need massive infrastructures that, you know, if I look at legacy businesses in the GCC that may well have invested in e-com with big teams, putting in big platforms and so on and so forth, you now actually don't need any of that anymore. So the economics of e-commerce have changed fundamentally. And the idea, I think everybody seems to forget this point, that e-commerce, the primary idea is to make money. Yes, you've got to service your customers, but the primary drive is to make money. And not a lot of e-commerce businesses make money. And that's very well understood that not a lot of e-commerce businesses make money. So our business makes money because of the business model that we've adopted. So I think that's been a really big learning for us in terms of it's the methodology of doing that new channel and the importance of it. And interestingly, I think since the lockdowns and things have stopped in the GCC, then we've seen a dramatic return to the stores, and the store sales have increased, and they're now actually above last year for some of our brands, which is very good. And this e-commerce sales have obviously softened again. So I think you have to look at this combination side of things in terms of what mix you want to chase and how you want to chase it. And you obviously need the technological support to be able to do that. We also looked at a big business model review. We looked at all of our brands and tried to work out which were the right channels for the individual brands. From a technological perspective, which was the most advantageous channel to push? Was it physical stores or e-commerce? Because some brands were not, you know, they're not set up to do e-commerce. Their models don't really fit it very well. So we had to have an a la carte menu approach to each of the brand solutions that we wanted to push forward with. And then the big thing, of course, is around the analytics and trying to work out, everyone talks about big data and having data and utilizing. The reality of life is that if you've got all this data and you don't do anything with it and you don't make any decisions, it's just data. You know, it doesn't help drive your business forward. So what we've tried to do is reduce the number of reports in the business. We get incisive kind of data in the business from our reports that are not too complex to read. We had a meeting scenario that backed up the reporting, and we made decisions very quickly. We change our business, our trading model at least twice a week in response to what's going on, whether that be in the physical store. And actually our e-commerce teams now, they're changing their strategies on a daily basis because we can be as adept as possible as we need to be for that.
Thank you, Mark. Great perspective. Hozefa, would you like to take this?
Sure, Tapan, thank you. In fact, if you hear what Patrick said in the morning, followed by Renuka, and then everybody here, what can I say? But as a technology provider and a solution provider to all these customers, it has been the most busy period for us. Okay, after the initial panic settled down, we were worried what's going to happen to our customers because our bread and butter is retail. The transformation and the acceleration that happened in this phase, I don't know how many of us realize, but actually we are creating history. A decade later, when we look back at this time would have set the ball rolling for digitization, virtualization that we have been talking about. Fortunately for us, we were associated with most of these retailers in their long-term planning process. So we knew what their plans were 3 years from now, 5 years from now. And as everybody has spoken, the pandemic resulted into acceleration of those digitization plans. So the adoption of technology that was initially planned for 3 to 5 years from now, and people were questioning maturity of some of these technologies, has become a reality, has become mainstream. So for us, it was more about how do we step up to meet the need of our customers so that they are able to successfully transition into a more digitized economy.
Thanks. So one point from what Hisham was saying is that he was describing what he was doing during January, February, when China was under the attack of the endemic at that time. So we had similar thoughts going through our minds in our business. I remember we import a lot of inventory from the United States. Our cheese comes from the US. Our special garlic sauce comes from the US. So we were, again, worried about supply chain. We were checking with our vendors in the US whether they will face any problem getting raw materials from China in terms of cardboard boxes to box our cheese. And they were saying, no, everything was fine. So we were relaxed. Little did we know that the actual endemic is going to turn into a pandemic and come to our shores. But there. So before we go to the next question, I have another bit of trivia for the audience. But before that, you got that answer right. I didn't explain how you will get your prize, though. Look me up on LinkedIn, send me an invite, and say you got this question right. And I will tell you exactly how you will get your 1,000 Papa points. You will have to download the Papa John's UAE app, and then I will be sending you those 1,000 Papa points. And the same goes for the winner of the next question, which is, in what year was the first text message sent, and what did it say? In what year was the first text message sent, and what did it say? And you cannot Google this.
It's technology, so they can use Google. You can Google it up.
All right. What, no guesses? If not the answer? No. All right. I will have to have that pizza. The answer is 1992. And so this very first text, sent on 3rd of December 92, simply read, "Merry Christmas." Neil Papworth, a British software architect, designer, and developer, who sent this first text message to Richard Jarvis, a director at Vodafone. And of course, 1 year later in 93, Nokia came up with the SMS feature with that world-famous beep. All right, I have questions for Hisham, Mark, and then Marwan. As business continuity had to be ensured amid this unprecedented crisis, what were your most teething challenges, and how did you rewrite rules to succeed in a truly digital-first landscape?
Well, as I said, 4 main challenges when we faced the crisis. One was the people, safety and welfare of our people, frontliners, back office, inside the region, outside the region. This was paramount for us. So we invested in this space. Second challenge was cost, cash flow, balance sheet. We luckily a highly conservative company that keeps its balance sheet intact at all times. So cash-wise, we were in place to actually weather the storm. Third challenge was the migration of our sales, 100% overnight shift from offline to online. How do you quickly meet that demand and manage traffic and make sure the technologies and the people are working together? And the fourth was to adapt to work from home. Everybody, was panicking at that time. and what do we do. And within a couple of days, we've issued new policies. We said to everybody, flexible working hours, flexible working space, and we empowered the regional managers through the whole chain of command and the hierarchy of the management. We let people deal with the crisis, as in when certain decisions are needed within their regional and local hubs. So that was a lot of there was a lot of flexibility in there. So those were the four main challenges. But then the infrastructure of our technologies was there. The tech team was there. We've already had a head of digital team in place. The e-com was up and running. And luckily, the brands, I mentioned Naomi in particular, which was ahead of the rest of the brands, was actually already making decent online sales. We're already having tens of thousands of customers in the data. So we were already in the ecosystem of digital data, customer data. We had scientists in our stores that were signing up people and subscribing to the data. So we were really fortunate to be in that position. But not all brands were at that stage. So each brand had its own life cycle with the digital journey, if you like. What happened when the pandemic hit is we accelerated that development. So learning from our most advanced brands, and then we replicated the formula quickly, given the different nuances and priorities within each brand. So today, the infrastructure of the digital ecosystem in KOJ looks like this. You have a central digital team with tech teams, experts, digital natives who design and create technologies and travel the world to find the right technologies. And then you have the brands in silos. We have about 8 or 9 brands, some of which are franchise, some of are homegrown. They work together with the central digital team. Each brand has its own agenda, has its own priorities, has its own customer sitting in the center of everything that brand does. And once the customer experience is defined and the customer journey is defined within a brand, then the digital team comes into play and go through a brainstorming sessions to identify the right technologies that serves the objectives of the brands and the priorities of the brands. And I really want to echo what Ms. Renuka said. I think she is a sensible, competent leader. We all look up to Landmark as one of the largest retail businesses in the region. And I'd like to maybe mention some of the words she really stressed on: value, product innovation, customer-centric organization. And that's really, it ticks all the boxes for a value-driven business. And for us, the brands come first, and the customer sits in the hearts of the brand. And those priorities gives you the edge, because if you keep the focus on the customer, then technologies will come by default. And they are, technologies accelerate the logic of how you compete, where you compete, how you structure yourself, how you design your brands to increase the perceived value of those brands, to increase the perceived value of the product, and to enhance the customer experience day in, day out. And that's the focus today, is to try to educate the tech team to understand the brands and the customer, and try to educate the brands team to understand the technologies that enable all of that through all the touch points the brands go through, or the customers go through. So yeah.
Mark.
We're kind of mid-process with this whole thing. I mean, it's all quite new to everybody, I think, in terms of the pace of what you have to do. I mean, echo Hisham's view about putting the consumer at the heart of everything you do. I mean, the one thing many companies stop doing is actually talking to the consumer, asking them what they want, and that's got to be a key pillar. We're just starting to do some listening groups this week alone with one of our brands, because one of the things that's come out of this pandemic for us is that we see significant opportunities in vertical brands, so brands that we own. So we're developing another lingerie brand of our own. We've already got a franchise brand that is almost like our own. But we see significant opportunities because of how the consumer's been behaving and what they've been telling us, voting with their feet and with their fingers nowadays in terms of transacting. So I think that's quite important. I think whilst the stores were shut and everyone was sat at home and communicating via Zoom and Skype and other methodologies, it was a great opportunity to really digest different opportunities for the individual brands and our total business. So I think when we looked at the consumer and putting the consumer at the heart of everything, there were critical things that were obvious. We'd already started a process off with CRM, and we've got a partner in Conic. They're in the room somewhere here today. There he is. Give you a plug. You can pay me later. Want a discount? Thanks. We'd already started our CRM process and driving our data behind the consumer and understanding exactly by brand how individual consumers were behaving. And we're building that database and we're building more knowledge. We then obviously had to connect or want to connect that up with the e-commerce world. So in e-commerce we were working with and are working with marketplace, pure play, and we're developing a back-to-back model, with other brand partners. And we will develop, and we've got a blueprint now to develop our own marketplace, which we'll launch early part of next year, which again wasn't part of the original thinking. But the key point here, I guess, is joining them all up, because you need the data analytics and you need the systemic solutions to be able to join up your CRM with your e-commerce. And then we recognized that there was something missing. So the thing that was missing was a large amount of sort of merchandise planning analytics. So we initiated a process very quickly to go to market to try and find some solutions to make sure that we could join up all the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle to make sure that we'd got incisive, accurate information to help us run our business better. But you can never lose sight of the fact that the original starting point and the end position has got to be what the consumer thinks and how they behave, because they pay the bills, and I think if you don't, look after your customer, no matter how digitally adept you need to be, and inept, I think that happens as well, you kind of have to make sure that you're giving the consumer exactly what they want. You can spend a lot of money on systems and get nothing back. So you have to make sure that you're getting a return and you're satisfying what the customer needs at the end of the day.
It's fascinating to see how each leader in the industry has dealt with the pandemic. Marwan, your perspective, please.
All right, so definitely it has been a period, as Hisham mentioned, all about people at the beginning, cash flows, definitely. But I guess to answer the tech part of it, what we were able to do between, I would say, March 15 and beginning of Ramadan, so you're talking about 6 weeks, we had no presence on any marketplace, imagine. It was somehow not within the strategy, giving products to others. So in 6 weeks, we launched on Noon, on Namshi, Mum's World, Spree, you name it, Amazon. And that had a lot of challenges to integrate, to even get people online to talk to each other, not to mention moving inventory during that time. So we've learned a lot on the marketplace front. On the monobrands front, and again, I'd like to give some facts so that people can understand exactly what has happened. We launched Aldo.com, we launched Mango.com, we launched our own Apple store. Someone would say, we should have done this 2-3 years ago. But if we go back March 16, March 17, everybody was thinking, when is this gonna end? No cash flows. It seems like Ramadan is gonna be missed. So I think it's amazing what a team can do and how a company fights back a challenge. So these were easily possible before. And then we launched our own website, as I mentioned. We actually, even during the cash flow, I would say, crunch, we escalated and we pushed faster our Oracle implementation. So we thought this is the best of times to actually, since everybody's staying at home, let's push more on the technology side. Let's take advantage of this big challenge. So we invested $8 to $9 million in an Oracle ERP system that today we are launching, I would say, module after module. So looking back in a way or another with all the challenges, and it has been a very tough period for a almost offline only retailer, actually if I look at it, a lot has been achieved. To add on what Mark mentioned, again, some of the providers are in the room, we offloaded, we had our own loyalty program, which I would say was version 1.0. We dropped it all, we stopped it, we exited, and now we're launching a new one. So what I'm trying to say is that a company passes through phases, and if you look at it constructively, I really think in few years we're gonna say, as someone mentioned, this might not have been the worst of years. Maybe this is the year that helped us leap into what we should have been, and we were lazy about it. Or, as I would like to call it sometimes, because I deal with franchises, so we are franchise retailers, we are complacent because we always say, partners don't want to integrate technology, you know, the ball is in their court, I'm just waiting. But the one thing I've noticed, which was in a way positive, again, just to be positive today, a lot of the brand partners that were not only hesitating, actually not even considering launching online, giving you the exclusive rights anyway, going themselves maybe direct on the Namshis of this world, suddenly they knocked our doors, they want to get rid of their inventory, they want to launch. So there has been a lot of positives. The problem was, just to also address issues, we had no team almost. So we had to get into consultants out of Dubai, which, you know, it is the hub and it has been there for years. And now if you tell me what has happened the last 3 months, I will tell you definitely we have restructured in the back office, which means unfortunately sometimes asking some people to leave. But the one thing we've been doing is adding e-commerce commercial people, which are very rare to find because we're all in a way or another traditional retailers. So it has been a very busy period, a lot have been achieved, but it's a journey that will not stop. And I always, I'm worried about what I don't know. And I guess it has been interesting.
No, wonderful. So that makes me go back to end of March when the real impact of the pandemic was being felt in the UAE. And we had to make a decision on what to do with our payroll costs because malls were ordered shut. So we lost half our restaurants, which are in malls. You know, no restaurant operator can be not exposed in the UAE because you have to be in malls. We had to make a call, and I remember we decided, we had our discussion, and then we decided that the pandemic will go one day. We need our trained manpower. We decided we will not let go a single soul. And we stuck to that, and I'm glad that now, where our business has pretty much come back to normal, thanks to our delivery part of the business, we are very happy to have not experienced a single job loss. Our next question is for the tech and solution provider, Hozefa, but before that, one for the audience.
Tapan, before you ask question to
Yes.
the audience, the second question you answered. So you got pizza for yourself.
Yes.
So can I connect with you on LinkedIn and we can share the party together?
Please, please.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right, so the next question for the audience is John McCarthy, professor at Stanford, coined this term in 1956, which we surround ourselves with today. What is that term? Again, John McCarthy, professor at Stanford, coined this term in 1956, which we surround ourselves with today. What is that term? Yes. Artificial intelligence, it is. Well done. Please send me an invite on LinkedIn, and I will ensure you get your 1,000 Papa points from Papa John's. Well done. So the theory and development of computer systems able to perform tasks normally requiring human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision making, and translation between languages. I use Siri all the time. I'm sure many of you do. So Hozefa, as a facilitator, how is Zebra helping retail businesses to accelerate the application of data-driven insights, which is now ever more crucial?
Thank you. Very, very interesting that you looked at that term called artificial intelligence. And I think, as I spoke earlier and I said, acceleration means this is the time that when you look back a decade later, you will say we launched some of the best innovations. During this pandemic, in fact, we went out and made a few acquisitions in the marketplace. And to Mark's point, he spoke about big data. He spoke about what are we doing with this data. One of the emerging trends that we see around big data is prescriptive analytics. So once we have the data, we start digging into it. We are able to analyze. You still need human intervention to look at that data, analyze, and make something out of it, which drives your decision-making process. What prescriptive analytics does is that the machine is intelligent enough to look at the data and come back to you telling you what actions are now prescribed. And not only those actions are prescribed, they are actually sent back to the owner that needs to take that action automatically. So as a technology vendor, that's where we went and specialized. We made some acquisitions, and we converged that product into what we call today prescriptive analytics. Alongside that, we made investments in machine learning, computer vision. So when you get prescriptive analytics, it needs a lot of sensor points for it to collect the data. So you have people who are feeding information back into your systems. You also have a lot of sensors around you. A mobile phone that you carry in your pocket today, just look at the amount of sensors it has, right? From geo-positioning to battery sensor, heat sensor. You talk about it, it's got sensors around it. Imagine all those sensors that are there in your mobile phone. Sensors like RFID, sensors like barcode scanners that are constantly scanning goods, people coming in and out. When you entered into this session today, you had a barcode that you had to scan at the counter. All this is sensing information. So machine learning or computer vision allows us to then make machines intelligent enough to really understand what information it is sensing. It then puts it onto the analytics engine, which understands what information has to be processed and what to make out of this information, and then come up with recommendation. So that's where we made a lot of investments during this pandemic. And as our customers today are accelerating digitization, and they're looking at making omni-channel more and more dominant part of their business, these prescriptive analytics have an important role to play to help them drive their business efficiencies. We spoke about prescriptive analytics move into the store or move into the warehouse, where you had traditional way of picking, traditional way of receiving goods, dispatching goods. Automation is coming into the warehouse. We have robots, we have cobots, which exist along with humans. So a simple example that as most of the retailers look at omni-channel, fulfillment becomes a key. Now when you look at your warehouse, the traditional picking operation would be time-consuming process to help you drive fulfillment for an omni-channel customer. So you now have existence of cobots which work along with the humans that improves the picking efficiency. So that's where, again, we as a technology provider made investment, or rather I would say accelerated the adoption of those technologies. From the warehouse, let's move inside the store. While stores have shut down, but still you have a big real estate. You have your stores. They will not completely go away. But as customers walk inside the stores, they are demanding a different experience, seamless, as frictionless as possible. So what are the technologies that I need to bring up which allows me to transition from the experience where I had a store associate going and interacting with the customer to now empowering the customer to make their decisions and make their choices in as seamless way as possible. So that experience is what we call frictionless customer experience inside the store, where there are multiple technologies available. Inside the store, for example, Alhokair's business or KOJJ's business, you have a lot of inventory, and that real estate is actually your asset. So unlike the marketplace vendors who are online vendors who look at central distribution from their central warehouses, you've got inventory right inside your stores. So by enabling something called perpetual inventory, you are now able to have enough visibility of your inventory count inside the store that enables you to convert your stores into kind of a mini distribution centers to fulfill the demands of your online consumers. So these are some of the technology innovations that companies like Zebra have driven in the marketplace.
Oh, thanks. Very insightful. Thank you. I have a question for Marwan now. See, you've brought many brands online since this pandemic. As people prioritize spending, which brands have performed well and have promised better returns? Do you expect shopping patterns to change, online, offline? Do you expect the spend to stabilize in the short, medium term?
All right, so apart from the brands that had already offline presence, we brought the online ones. But what's more interesting is that we've acquired and we announced online-only brands that we are taking the franchise rights for. And some of them, we're actually building stores for them. So we're taking online, offline also. So part of the omni-channel. So to give an example, we signed a brand out of Manchester called Public Desire, which is a growing women's apparel concept. It's an online-only player. And now we're going to build stores where we're going to integrate a lot of the technologies, because we have the flexibility with such a franchisor to plug in technology. And actually that would be our, I would say, pilot test to try new things that we were not able to do before. So yes, we've added online brands, we've added online-only brands, and now we're adding online and offline brands, taking them offline. So that's first. Second, what we have seen through the pandemic is interesting dynamics. I mean, the best performing brands were homeware brands, brands that are actually, that has to do with home accessories, so people are staying home. So brands like Zara Home or Oysho, they did extremely well online, versus others that should have done better, like teenage brands, but they didn't. Now, there are no surprises in retail. I would say the leader and the best performer has been Zara, for example. So anything that is so strong offline, usually you get the same result online. It's no secret. We've seen a very remarkable spike in our Apple product sales, even during the pandemic, which means people were staying more at home, buying new iPads, whatever. Then, with schools not reopening in Saudi, you had to sell a lot of Apple products online. So this skyrocketed 600 times, mainly because it's a commodity. You don't have to wear it, you don't have to try it, you just, you press a button. So we launched an online site and we did tremendously well. Having said all of that, already it's a fact that I think you mentioned that whatever we've seen should have happened maybe in our minds in 2025, and we're still in 2020 and it's happening. So for us, it's not anymore a question whether we're gonna sell offline or online. I really don't have a preference, because eventually it's all about where the customer would like to shop. Today, what's very important for a company like us is that we are exclusive online and offline. So anything that has to be bought has to go through us, and then I leave it up to the customer. Our job is try to make their lives easier in terms of convenience, linking that offline and online, which is, I believe, the project for the next 12 months, whether training people, making them understand how they can cross-sell and upsell using online, the capabilities, putting the incentives in place, which again, were not there before, incentives on the online, educating the team on the KPIs that are changing now. Our KPIs used to be very much offline. Today, we're introducing the online KPIs to the teams. But definitely online, and this growth will continue, especially in a market like Saudi. Penetration of smartphones is amazing. Usage of social media is the highest in the world. It's a very relatively big market geographically. You cannot cover it all. There are so many. If you look at our sales, you'll be surprised to see sales coming from areas like Tabuk, which is extreme northwest, then areas from the south, and they contribute a sizable amount, which means you've been missing on sales. So as Mark said, the minute you get your offline to at least flat or positive like for like, online is the excess that you're getting that you didn't have before. Now the interesting thing again is that till now, apart from our online only, I would say, platform, which we need to experience and understand, online has been profitable for us even more than offline for a single reason. We're getting the same terms offline and online, but we're not investing in the technology because we're piggybacking on the technology of the franchisors. So all these, I would say, perceptions that we had in the past are fading away. But definitely, I think, I cannot put a number. It doesn't matter what would be the online percentage of offline, but it's definitely gonna grow and grow and grow, simply because, again, if we talk a little bit about Saudi, let's understand the market. Women now are in the marketplace, they are working, they need convenience, they need speed. I guess things are changing, and we just need to understand the young generation in Saudi and what does it take for us to remain relevant to them.
Great. In order to make up time, I have one last question for the audience, then a last question for Hisham. So the question for the audience is, what device released in 1993 gave rise to the term personal digital assistant? You have an answer. What is it? Palm pad is not the right answer. Yes? Sorry? Yes, it is a mobile kind of device, but what is that device? We want the name. Yes? Sorry?
Sorry, was it
Yes,
digital
but
diary?
the device had a name.
Pager? It was a pager.
I heard Newton message pad is the right answer. Well done, sir. Please send me an invite on LinkedIn, and I will ensure you get 1,000 Papa points from Papa John's. Apple released this Newton message pad in 93. Of course, later it was abandoned in 98 or 99, thereabouts. But then, of course, iPhone is what it is. The rest is history. So, Hisham, this one's for the road. Looking ahead, what is the master plan or winning strategy to make your business more agile and future fit?
Well, like everybody said, we're moving from bricks and mortars into bricks and clicks. And that transition implies that one has to adapt the omni-channel view of how you do business. And the virtual world and the physical world colliding and becoming one. That's the future I envisage for our brands. And I'm a big fan of, I advocate value of brands, and brands management is a means to create value. Whether you have the best technology in the world or not, it won't work if you don't have strong brands. Your customers will always turn to strong brands. So we'll have to work on brands and find technologies that enhances brands' value. And I think the future for us, depending on the sector and depending on the brand positioning, you either compete on value, push costs down and stay there, pass on the benefit to consumer and compete on price, And unfortunately, that's a place for very few players, mega players. And then the other choice you have is to work on your brands, enhance the perceived value of those brands, and create value through that. And for us, we're working on the store of the future, trying to create that virtual and physical experience in one place, enabling experience, enabling pain-free experience, enabling digital first journey and physical first journey together at the same time, creating a seamless, flawless, and frictionless experience in the store, online, on social media, and so on. So the philosophy of this omni-channel is usually easier said than done, and it takes a lot of hard work, it takes a lot of technologies, a lot of cost, a lot of also drive. And I would say all these programs, transformation, digital, technologies, brands, they start with the customer, but they have to be sponsored by the CEO and the board. If I don't attend our weekly meeting to follow up, put my hands on these progress, look at everything that is happening in this journey, it's very difficult to push forward because your team needs empowerment, they need quick approvals, they need support, they need encouragement, they need motivation. So, and I'd like to add, just, the management of the crisis has been about people more than it has been about technology, because the resilience and the passion and loyalty of the people really, really showed up in our company, and I'm sure in many cases. It's even to the audience, showing up today, so excited to go back to the normal world of pre-COVID and a decent turnout. That's really amazing. So the future belongs to us as people to think through, create brands. And I just want to echo also what Marwan said, franchise zones. This region, for better or worse reasons, it's mainly a franchise region. We over the last 50 years, businessmen from the region, we've fought hard. It was about brand grabbing and land grabbing all the way. But I think time has come, with technologies being democratized to a large extent, people have to think about creating homegrown private label brands to control the destiny, to add value to the economies, create jobs, and then the technologies will make much more sense and add meaningful dimension to what you do, because you will go into a different space, the space of creativity, innovation, creating products and services that is really doesn't exist in the region to a large extent. If you exclude FMCG or exclude some of the, for example, Centerpoint, some of these homegrown brands. So really, I advocate for the future, homegrown brands, control destiny, leveraging technologies to the best, to the maximum. And what also gives hopes in this context is Kareem, for example, that really emerged from this world. Souk.com did it before it came in and was bought. So there are massive examples of technological advancements and revolutions in this region that I'd like, personally, I speak before our board and say, let's create great brands. Let's add more. Let's do that. So the future is promising. I'm optimistic.
Indeed. Thank you very much. Very well said. So we all want to drive this Ferrari called technology. Well, then data is the fuel to drive this beauty. Customer data insights in a world where we have so much technology is what will ensure you drive a successful business. Thank you very much, audience, for being patient. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Hisham. Thank you, Hozefa. Thank you, Marwan. And thank you, Retail Middle East. Thank you.
Huge thanks to all of our panelists for that discussion. Very, very informative indeed.